Greetings. We'll pause just a few moments to allow everybody to connect, and then we'll get started. Okay. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time zone you're in. I'm Patricia Kranz, the Executive Director of the Overseas Press Club of America. And on behalf of the OPC and our partner, the International Women's Media Foundation, I welcome you to this interactive session on fostering psychological safety and resilience in the face of trauma as you do your job as journalists. We're also grateful for the support of the Committee to Protect Journalists, the Rory Peck Trust, and ACOS Alliance. Leading the training is Anna Zellhuber, a psychoanalyst and emergency psychology specialist based in Mexico City. She will start with a slide presentation and then direct a guided and interactive exercise with ample time for questions and discussion. In 2005, Anna founded Vinland Solutions, which provides psychological support to women journalists, human rights defenders, and women in politics who have been a target of persecution. As you can probably see, this program is being recorded, but when we post the video on YouTube, the only thing that will be on the video is Anna's formal presentation. Comments or questions from individuals will not be included. So you can feel free and safe to ask any question or share any experience. That will not be shared publicly, but of course, anybody on this Zoom call will be able to hear it. So with that, I turn the program over to Anna. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you, Patricia, for having me. Thank you, Chad, for all the help you're giving in this work that we're doing today. And I'm seeing names from all over the world, and I like that, okay? Let me tell you that at Vinland, we have worked with people from all around the world. Well, not all around, but yes, from Asia, from Africa, from Europe, from America. And I will try to make this so that you will all feel included as much, with examples from all around the world, so that you can see things from your perspective, okay? And let me tell you a little bit about what we're gonna do. I'm gonna start sharing my presentation. Just give me a second, please. Oh my, where did it go? Here it is. Can you see this or not? Yes, I think you can, right? Yes, can you see the presentation?
It looks good, Anna.
Okay, thank you very much. So today, well, this is the introduction. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more. Then we're going to talk about some definitions that we're going to be talking about during the whole workshop. And then we're going to have a little discussion in small groups so that you, among yourselves, can talk about how to prevent, mitigate, and/or mitigate the circumstances and the impact of the things you do as journalists. Then we're going to have a small recess of 10 minutes, and then we are going to start talking really about safety. What is, how to make a psychological safety plan, and we're going to do our own exercise on creating our own general personal psychological safety plan, okay? At Vinland, we started working with journalists like 18 years ago now, because the International Committee of the Red Cross, before that, we worked mostly in natural disasters, but we started also working with the Committee of the International Red Cross in some areas of disruption because of man-made disasters like war and things like that, okay? And it was the International Committee who asked us to give a workshop to Article 19, which is also one of the organizations that work in the protection of journalists. And the state of the Mexican, it was for Mexican journalists, the state of the emotional state of the Mexican journalists was so bad, because at that time, it was still happening, but at that time is when it started really being rough in Mexico for all of them. Many of them were being killed. Many of them were being forced to relocate to another country because their lives were at risk. And it was really tough. So we told Article 19 that we wanted to work with them to do something about this. So we told them, you can pay us whatever you can, it doesn't matter. And we'll give them 9 to 12 sessions for the PTSD and the acute stress and things like that. And then if the journalist wants to stay in therapy for longer because they have other issues, they can stay and they're going to pay whatever they can. And we still work like that, because as we work in so many different parts of the world, we couldn't put a fee for everybody the same. So we better just let the journalists, the people we work with, the patients, decide how much they are going to pay for their sessions. And this has worked very well, because obviously it's not the same for someone who's in Cuba that for someone is in Kenya, or someone that is in Iran, or someone that is in India, or someone is in the UK, or in the United States, or in Canada. It's very different, the situation and the financial and the economical possibilities they have. So that's basically the work we do. And what we do, aside from giving workshops and doing guides and things like that, we also work mostly giving therapy to those who, because of the job they do, they present symptoms of acute stress, or moral injury, or vicarious trauma, or in many cases also, unfortunately, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because they've lived violence indirectly as victims, and they start presenting symptoms of PTSD. So let's start talking about the subject today. And unfortunately, we need to talk about violence, because violence is what brings us here today, to be safe from it, and to do the coverage, whether you are a journalist or a photojournalist, to do a coverage that is safe for you in all senses, okay? And the reason you need to be safe is because journalists are being targeted all over the world, because you tell the stories that others don't want people to know about, because you present to the world the crooked things, the lies, the killings, or all of the money stealing, or the things that politicians or organized crime groups are doing. And obviously they don't want you to speak. And the more you do a good job, the more you're going to be targeted, whether if it's directly or online, but it means you're doing a good job. And for the World Health Organization, violence is the intentional use of physical force or power, threatened or actual, against one's self, another person, or against a group or community that either result in or has a high likelihood of resulting in injury, death, psychological harm, maldevelopment, or deprivation. And I like this definition because it includes something that we many times don't think about, and that it can be done to one's self. I've seen a lot of journalists throughout these 18 years. I've worked with a lot of journalists throughout these 18 years. And one thing that not all of you, but many of you have in common is that you don't take good care of yourselves. You are so prompt to help others, so prompt to focus in helping the world, helping the other persons, but you are not as equally prompt to help yourself, to keep yourself safe, to keep yourself in a good place. And that's because you have this personality that is common to all first responders. We psychologists as first responders in natural or man-made disasters in Vinland. We also have that personality, okay? But we have learned to see it and manage it so that we can be okay. So partially, it's important for us to know how to be safe. That's the first step. And what we can do to manage our emotions, to manage the things that are happening to us because of the work we're doing. When you see violence in real time, in real life, as journalists, you're taking the photo, you're interviewing the victims. You become secondary victims of that violence. That's called vicarious trauma, okay? And that secondary victimization that we do, because we also do it in Vinland with the psychologists that work with violence, we also do it when we hear the stories of the victims, has a toll on us. I've heard so many times from many journalists saying, but I cannot respond, I cannot feel, I have to stay cool and safe and not having emotions. And yes, it's true. When we are working, when you are working, when you're doing a story, you have to keep calm. You cannot outburst in crying with a victim of whatever you are covering. You have to be detached a little bit about the situation. But once you get home, you're back to be a regular human being. And a regular human being is impacted by the things they see, they hear, they smell, especially when they are because of violence. So once you get home, you need to let yourselves feel, okay? We'll talk a little bit more about this at the end, in the last part of the presentation. We're also going to be talking of one of the things that is happening today a lot, that is online abuse. And again, hold a second, it's just that I want to change, but I can't. Okay. Online abuse is a behavior that is threatening, and it's done to harass or humiliate, humiliation, to provoke humiliation to one person. And I love the Pan American Online Harassment definition that they give, that is a pervasive or severe to individual or group through harmful behavior. And I have to look for pervasive, since my first language is Spanish. I am always learning new words in English, obviously, also in Spanish, but I'm always learning new words. And I love the word. I really felt in love with this word. Spread throughout so thoroughly as to be seen or felt everywhere. And yes, online abuse, sometimes people say, well, it's just online, but it's not true. Someone who's been targeted online feels it's everywhere. It spreads in all their lives. It spreads in all the spheres, the different spheres of our lives. When you're online abuse, when you're being targeted with online abuse, you're afraid because you don't know how big the threat can get. If it's just a troll, and I say just a troll when it's just someone that wants the notoriety you want and is attacking you so that everybody looks at him or her and says, oh yeah, that person is saying things, you know, because they want to be in your place, because they're envious of you. But it can also be a country targeting. This, for example, I've seen patients in Iran that are being targeted online by their government. And the Iran government has this capacity, they're capable of getting everywhere. And they have this machinery that makes it so that it's devastating, really devastating. And you don't know how far they can go. You don't know how far these threats can become a real threat to your life. So you start not seeing your friends because you feel you're putting them at risk. You start not seeing your family because you feel that you are putting them at risk. You start isolating. You start not working as much because you cannot post as many things on the online because you have to go offline a little bit because of this situation. And I always say that online abuse is a kind of dead. The way it's perceived, it's not such, but the way it's perceived is like a death of the journalists themselves. It's like you cannot exercise your profession the way you used to. Okay, so it feels really, really strongly. But I would like to focus ourselves in how to prevent, respond, or mitigate. And I want to make this distinction, and this is from the International Federation of the Red Cross. The International Federation is in charge of natural disasters, and this is a concept that comes from natural disasters. But I love that they have this this manual that is for violence, how to prevent, respond, and mitigate violence in different countries, because they also see that. And to bring this to the table, to bring these concepts to the table of discussion with journalists about the violence they're living, I love this because it's not the same. And I want to make the distinction between prevention, response, and mitigation. We are mostly responding to violence, and responding is an action or intervention to cope with and handle the violence after it occurred. And we have become responders of violence in the world. But as violence has grown, as violence has become more persuasive, more insidious in many countries, I would say in all countries, we need to start thinking more in prevention and mitigation, because that's the way we're going to stop this growing of violence in general. And prevention means to avoid violence from occurring in the first place. That's the way, that's the ideal, let's say, to stop it from happening. But we know, and I am conscious, that as journalists, as I said, if you're doing a good job, you're not going to be able to prevent it 100%. You're going to be targeted. Or you are going to be in situations, for example, if you're covering war, or you're covering a manifestation, or you're covering something that can become volatile, and it can become aggressive, and it can become guns and people punching each other, you are going to be in a situation of violence. And that's something you cannot stop from happening always. So I think that the focus should be on mitigation. And that means decreasing further risk of violence and reducing the impact when it does occur. And we are going to be focusing on mitigation today, on how to reduce the impact that it has on you. So we're now going to go, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I don't know why I can't. Okay, there we go. We're going to stop sharing the screen so that we can go to small groups. And what I want you to do in those small groups is to discuss, in your experience, what can you do to prevent the situations you've been going through, to prevent impact on you in the different coverage. I don't know, think of your own experiences. What have you done in the past to prevent being in harm's way? What are the measurements that you usually take to prevent being in harm's way? And what can you do to mitigate the impact that this has on you? Just a storm brain to think between yourselves in small groups. What could you do to mitigate? And what are you doing today to prevent being in harm's way? And then I would like for each group to appoint a speaker. Okay, this is going to be only 15 minutes, so it's going to be fast. But from the beginning, appoint someone who's going to present the findings to the whole group, because it's a big group. So we cannot, unfortunately, we cannot let everybody talk. But appoint one person so that this person can talk about what the findings, the general findings that you found, that you have, the discussions you have in your small group. I don't know if the instructions are Okay, so what are you doing to prevent being in harm's way? And what are you doing to mitigate the impact of what you cover? Okay, so if you at any time you can you can send a chat to me if you have any kind of question, or if you need my assistance, please. And if someone feels emotional, please know that you can contact me and we can chat a little bit while the small groups are going through, or we can have a little chat by WhatsApp, for example, at the end of the session. Please feel free that if you become emotional, because this is a tough, whenever we talk about violence, a lot of things can happen inside of us. So feel free to send me a chat here, and we will see about how can I help you afterwards for a little while, so that you can overcome the emotions that overwhelm you in this instance, if it happens. Okay, so if we can now go to the chat. Appoint please one speaker. What are you doing to prevent being harm's way, and what do you think you can do to mitigate the impact? Okay. Okay, we're back. Is everybody back? Please raise your hands to know that you're back and we can continue. Okay, so we're gonna, I'm gonna start sharing my screen now. Okay. Okay, so for each situation, there should be a plan, okay? You can have general guidelines, but you have to make a plan for each situation. And the 3 steps to be safe is physical safety, digital safety, and emotional safety. I'm going to post these links at the end, so please, if you please can go to them. But you can find physical safety plans in the page of the International Women Media Foundation, and there's this platform that is called totemproject.org, and you can find both in English and Spanish safety courses for physical safety, digital safety, and emotional safety. Okay, so you can go to those pages and you can find the links, and I'm going to post these links at the end of the session, or chat. I don't know if you can post them for me, please, in the chat, because as I am in my presentation mode, I cannot do that right now. Okay, so for psychological safety, the first thing you need to know is that if your life and your information is safe, your emotions are going to be more manageable. But if your life or your information is not safe, then it's going to go like big time. Your emotions are going to be all over the place, because obviously when your physical safety is at stake, that is when we get in an emergency state, and we first need to protect us. We need to protect the physical safety. We need to keep alive. We need to stay alive. Okay, in terms of psychological safety, and I want you to start doing your general personal safety plan, psychological safety plan, as I go talking. Okay, so at the end, you're going to already have like the guidelines, the main guidelines for your personal safety plan. For example, I want you to imagine yourself in the next coverage that you are planning to do. Okay, whatever it is. And I want you to think about the sights, what you're going to see, what you're going to smell, what you're going to hear, and what their circumstances are, and what are the possible risks that there can be there. And also consider your general emotional mind state at the moment. How are you now? For example, if you had lived a grieving process right now because you broke out with your partner in life, or because someone died at your family, or someone is sick at your family, you're going to be in an emotional state that is going to be, it's going to put you in a more vulnerable place. But if you see it and you manage it, then you mitigate the risk of that happening. Okay, so I want you to think in this next coverage what you're going to see, what you're going to smell, what are you going to hear, what are the circumstances, and consider how are you now. And it doesn't have to be always something that puts your life at risk. Sometimes it's just, for example, you're going to interview a mother that lost their children, whether because there was a shooting in a school, whether because they were killed and disappear, you know. How are you going to feel in front of that person, in front of that woman? And consider your general emotions and mind state also is going to help in that case. Put yourselves in different situations or the situation you're going to be covering next. Okay, it can be an earthquake, it can be a plane crash, it can be a manifestation, it can be simply going to talk to a victim of violence. And talking to a victim of violence also has a huge impact on us because we're empathic beings and you're gonna feel empathic to that person. Okay, so you're gonna feel what the other one feels, not in the same amount, not as huge, but you're gonna have a sense of what the other one is feeling. And therefore you are gonna be feeling that in a way, okay? So imagine yourselves in that situation. The more you know yourself, the better. Try to find aspects of the coverage that might be linked to your personal life or experience. For example, if you have children, those stories that involve children are going to impact you even more than to those of us that we don't have children. I don't have children, okay? I have children in the family, but I don't have children of my own. So I don't feel personally responsible for the children of the family. That's their parents' job, okay? But how are you gonna be impacted by the story you're gonna cover, whether if it's in photograph or in video or in writing the story? And you mentioned before that covering with video, you are gonna be exposed to the same experience over and over while you're editing the video or you are editing the photos. And that is true. You're going to be seeing them. Images impact us even more so than what the stories we can hear sometimes. So yes, put yourself in that place and put yourself, how is this going to impact you? What am I living now? What am I, for example, if you are a refugee, if you are in exile, obviously covering migration or covering exile, someone that is exiled too, is going to have an impact in your own story. You're going to feel much more, you're going to get what the other one is going through. And it's going to prompt your emotions, your personal emotions with the things you've lived. If you lived violence at some point in your life, whether as in your childhood, or being a grown up, you're going to be more empathic with someone who has lived violence. For example, in feminicides that not only in Mexico happened, in Serbia, in Mexico, in Kenya, in Zambia, in India, there are a lot of feminicides, a lot of them. And if you're going to interview someone, a mother of someone who was killed, or someone who is threatened to be killed, or a woman who's living violence, that kind of violence that can take her to be killed, you're going to, if you yourself lived violence as a child, or lived violence with a spouse or with a significant other, you're going to understand better that person. But that's also going to make a bigger impact because it's going to move your own memories of that, your own emotions. So you're going to join the emotions of the victim you're interviewing with your own emotions. So think of those things that can impact you in a certain level. Okay, so think of the sides of the what you're going to see, smell, but also think, how can this story connect to my own life? How can there be a connection to my own life with this story? I have a lot of journalists, for example, in the US, in the United States, that cover migration, but them themselves are sons and daughters of migrants. So they know by the stories of their parents what it is to be a migrant in the United States. And they know on personal level how it is to be a child migrant in a United States school. And sometimes their experience is beautiful, but some others, they are bullied because they are different. So you need to think how this connects to my own experience. So we have two things so far for your personal safety, psychological safety plan, okay? How the smell, sight, listening is going to impact you. How does it connect to your personal story? The third part of a personal psychological safety plan is to choose someone to monitor you and be your safety contact. You need to have a safety contact. And it can be someone you work with, and it can be someone on your newsroom, and it can be a friend. I suggest not to make it your the person you live with, your family, your close family, because that's going to have an impact on them differently. They're going to be more afraid of what might happen to you. So choose a friend, choose a coworker, choose someone that can understand the situation and can help you with it if you get in the middle of something that needs to be protection. Okay. Now, about what to do in an emergency to keep calm, okay? First, physical safety, okay? As I said before, you need to stay alive. That's the first step. It's the obvious one. So you need to find a place to run or a place to hide and search for 3 places to do that. That's the basic. It's not all of it. It's the basic of physical safety. Then, once you're in a safe place, you need to breathe. And you need to breathe to oxygenate your brain, to calm down, and to make good decisions. If your brain is in emergency situation, in emergency psychological situation, it's not going to be thinking straight. So you need to breathe, really do a good deep breathing, 1, 2, or 3 deep breathings, and then you can decide what you're going to do. If you can, get in touch with your emergency contact. If you feel that you're at risk, get in touch with your emergency contact so that they can follow you in Find My Friends or whatever means you use for that. And to let them know of the situation so that they can be monitoring you. And maybe if it's needed, for example, if the police is threatening you, so that they can have the contact numbers of your lawyer or of your news media or whatever, so that they can put the machinery of law into getting you out of jail if this is the case, or if you are simply devastated by something you listen to, you can call your safety contact and tell them a little bit about it at the end of the night, so you can debrief with them and you can let that out, okay? But you need to be in a safe place first, physically, and then breathe, okay? How are you going to process an emergency situation to stop PTSD from happening? And what I mean by this is that PTSD is not, the post-traumatic stress disorder doesn't come from the situation. It comes from the assessment that the individual does, that you couldn't save yourself, that you didn't do the right things, that you put yourself on unnecessary risk, that you made a mistake by going there or by responding to the situation. And you start mistrusting yourself and mistrusting yourself to be safe. That's what PTSD really is. The mistrust of oneself on our capability to protect ourselves. So if we mitigate the circumstances, if we plan prior to it, our responses are going to be better, and PTSD most likely is not going to happen. You're going to be stressed. You're going to be a little shaky afterwards, but you're not going to have PTSD. And it is important for you, once you're at home, and many of you mention it, once you're at home, to let it out. Catharsis and abreaction are the two parts of a therapy, really. A lot of people know about catharsis, and it's very widely spread. But catharsis alone, it's not the solution. It's a part of the solution. If you only do catharsis, if you do too much of it, you're gonna go the other side. Instead of helping, it's gonna put you in a worse situation. Catharsis is to let your emotions out, but you're always letting your emotions out. You eventually are gonna be hooked in those emotions, and you're not gonna be able to get rid of them. So you need to do the next step, that is abreaction. And abreaction is the process through which we lower or detach the emotional charge of an idea by processing it and relearning from the experience. And this is the key of it. What can I learn from this? And by learning from this, you're going to stop PTSD from happening. For example, when we go into a zone, whether if it's because of a natural disaster or of a man-made disaster, for example, when we respond to a newsroom that had just been attacked, or when we go to a natural disaster zone, the first thing we do is talk about what you can do next time. What can you learn from this? What are you going to change for being more secure, for being more secure next time, for being safer next time? And by doing that, you are doing a reaction. You're not just letting your emotions, you're letting your emotions teach you. Emotions are a natural response, and it's something we cannot control because it comes from our instincts. All animals in the planet have emotions, not feelings. There's a difference. But emotions is something that comes from our instincts, and our instincts to survive. They're made so that we can learn from them and not repeat the same thing that put us at risk. So learn from your emotions, and that way you're doing the abreaction. Basically, ask yourselves, why did this event move me or made me scared? What can I learn from this? Okay, what can I learn from this experience so that I can be safer next time? Or sometimes it's not that you were unsafe, it's simply that it moved you so much because it linked with your personal things. So what can you learn from that person? The resilience, for example. What can you learn from this situation about your own personal life? How did, for example, the violence that you lived as a child impacted you, and you haven't even thought of it? You have just repressed it. Maybe you need to find a way to process it by going through therapy, or I don't know, some people think that they don't like therapy. It's okay, I'm a therapist, but I don't sell therapy to everybody. Not everybody is meant for therapy. Maybe meditation, maybe getting to groups that you can talk about this. Find a way to learn from this and help yourself through this also. After processing, whether if it's alone or whether you do it with your safety contact, okay, do something that suits you and brings balance to life. You remember that we talked about this at the beginning of the session? To balance your life. Remember, there is joy too. As I said before, I meditate, I do yoga, I do Tai Chi, but I also do things like, for example, play with my cats. I start my mornings playing with my cats and singing to them. And I also put music and sing and dance to that music because I want to be in a joyful state during the day, even though I hear awful things. I want to stay positive, okay, so that I can help my patients. But I also play Xbox. Yes, I know, it's weird. Those of you who know me, some of you do, and I say this always because I want you to think outside the box. I laugh a lot with the kids I play with. I even play with my nephews and my nephews that are little ones. I play with my brother, and I play with my spouse, and I play with a group of friends I've made throughout the years in the Xbox. And we are so silly and so goofy that I laugh hard. I always tell them, you are my therapist. I have to pay you for this session, you know, because it makes me laugh. It makes me remember that life is also about fun. So do something that suits for you. Take a warm bath, play with your pets, play with if you have kids in the house, play with them. It's a very good way to process things and to give balance to life. Find a way. So remember, and I'm going back, okay? What are you gonna hear, smell, the sounds, the sights, the smells, the circumstances? Consider what are you going through. That's the second step. Choose someone to monitor you and be safe with, and find a way that she or he can follow you wherever you are, and give that person time. I'm going to call you when I arrive to the place, then I'm going to call you at the middle, and then I'm going to call you when I'm out of the place, for example. Okay, make a plan with that person. Have a physical safety plan, have a digital safety plan. If you're in danger, get to safety and breathe. Okay, have catharsis, allow yourself. For me, catharsis, I find catharsis when I need to process something that I heard from a patient that is really tough. I find that, for example, certain TV shows like Supernatural, I know again is strange, but it's a TV show about a group that is a very odd group, because it's humans with angels and demons and witches, but all of them working together to save the humanity. And for me, that's cathartic, and I can start crying. Also, Pixar and Disney are always do it. Pixar and Disney movies always allow me to cry and to process this. Okay, then I think, why does this move me particularly? Okay, and then I do a routine, an everyday routine in which I find joy in my life. I laugh, I sing, I dance, I meditate, I do Tai Chi nowadays. I do things around my day, during all my day, to balance my life. So, do you think you can choose to prepare yourselves for the things that you are going to be covering next? Do you think that you can choose the activities you're going to do afterwards to promote catharsis and reaction, and also to give balance to life? Do you think you can do that now? Okay, and write it down. We're almost out of time, so I'm going to stop sharing. So do you think you can do that? Yes, I see a lot of yeses. Good. That's a safety plan. It's not complicated. It's simple, but it's as simple as doing this kind of things that is going to change how safe emotionally you are. Okay? Is there any comment? 1 minute comment? Otherwise, I will give the microphone to Patricia to finish the session. Personally, I would like to thank all of you for your participation, for being here all the way. Okay, Patricia, thank you for this beautiful opportunity.
Well,
I
thank
hope
you,
they
Anna.
get something out of it.
Thank you, Anna, for your presentation with so many useful and helpful suggestions. And thank you all for joining and participating. And in case you didn't hear it at the beginning, a video of this program will be posted, but it will only be Anna's comments, not any individual's comments. So you don't have to worry about your safety. So I wish everyone a good day or good night, and thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.